maybe to explain, I guess,
It's a brand new world.
what gets you going. Yeah.
It's exciting. It's just as I slowly become a real software developer, it's weird to speak like that, but there's so much difference from you being able to do something versus starting to try to actually master something, whatever that means, but really say, hey, I get it. I know how to do this properly and build something that's from the ground up the best current way to do it. And it just ends up, the result is it's world class and might do things that legacy systems just aren't capable of doing and all these things. So anyway, in the past, like it's been about 10 years that the word reactive has really been known by developers becoming more mainstream. Yeah. But it's really only the last like 5 years that it's become more viable and developers are starting to shift to this new paradigm of what you'd call reactive programming.
Yeah.
Or you'd write things declaratively. The opposite being imperative, where you're kind of telling something everything what it needs to do, versus declarative says, hey, I just want you to react in this way.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about how all the little ways that
like
you're
how
doing
it's
it.
actually done. Could you, for the layman, could they describe it almost as the difference between, I could be wrong on this, but the difference between typing in something in Google versus typing in something in like ChatGPT or an AI?
100%. 100%.
ChatGPT, or you type the same thing in Google's like, hey, I have a question. And just like, well, here's some pages you can read about it, whatever.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT, it like gives you ways to go about how to solve your problem. And just, it goes so much more.
Yeah.
Right.
It basically, you tell it what you want the end result to be, and you don't worry about how it arrives there.
Right. Yeah.
One way I would show someone the power of ChatGPT is I might say, well, think of Agassi in his second prime in 2000 and whatever.
Tennis player Agassi.
Think if Andre Agassi was playing Blake Shelton today. Can you tell me how you think they do and what you think their techniques would be, especially, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Full analysis of how their two gameplays would coincide and how Agassi's return would counter. And depending on the year, I said for Agassi, it'd be a very different answer.
Right.
And then if you ask another question to go deeper, like somebody my mother knows was having a procedure. It's actually my aunt was having a procedure with a heart. It's a normal one, but they'd have to go from one chamber to the other. And my mother was a nurse and used to you'd go in the chamber where you're doing something.
Okay.
But they're actually coming in the reverse veins to come into the other chamber of the heart. One pulls blood, one pushes blood. She couldn't figure out, because it's different than it used to be, what they did. So she did a lot of Googling and research, realized they actually make a little hole between the two cavities in the heart and push this camera through that hole.
Okay.
Sounds crazy
stuff. Yeah.
With all the blood and you're actually making holes in your heart, but it's a common procedure.
Right.
It's not. So she went through a lot of stuff. I asked ChatGPT, gives me the answer right away. And I said, okay, let's put ourselves right there when it's entered the heart and you're doing the hole. What area of the walls, how would you select? What about all the blood? A surgeon, a heart surgeon, would be like ChatGPT's now, I think, I'm not going to go deep into this, but starting to, I think one test recently, top 300 software developers in the year it ranked. It's top maybe 0.1% for LCAT and MSAT now or something. Like it's just, and it's just going to get better and better with generative. So anyway, reactivity, that's kind of what we're talking about. So when I ask about the tennis players, I would have to ask Google, go through each specific web page, try to learn about each.
Oh, you would have to like write it down yourself and keep your own spreadsheet.
Take hours. And the funny thing is, at the end of it, you'd be making educated guesses.
Yeah.
GPT could be hallucinating, but there's a 99% chance now that it's accurate. You're always going to check the answers and say,
yeah,
you just told me this, but somehow you mixed up Agassi for Sampras or something.
Yeah, right.
But as long as you look at the thing, 99+% of the time, it's right on the money.
It's getting pretty good.
And what's funny is, if you really do the research, you're like, reading this, I'm more sure of my answer than if I spent 4 hours myself where I'm not an expert in that field. Because it's like GPT went out and asked all these sports analysts who know their field by aggregating and doing the magic.
Yeah.
So that's a great analogy to reactive programming, where if you can abstract all that stuff underneath on how it gets there and just ask for a result, and it does a really good job, it's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. So my mind's going off in so many different ways. So knowing this information about reactive programming, is there any way? I'm just trying to put this in the context of a new business owner or a new entrepreneur trying to figure out how they could, get their market or their product to market faster.
Mhm.
Is there any way they could leverage this type of like reactive programming into what they're doing? Like, is it maybe just even incorporating AI into the stuff that they're doing, or is
Yes.
there a way that they can change just how their mindset is? Like,
Both. Like, if you were just creating a soap dish, the way you produce it totally, it depends. Like, if it's not handmade,
right? Yeah.
if you're an expert in reactive stuff on your shop floor, it's going to react to all the equipment making it to detect if anything's going wrong, and it's going to make it just is it's a better way of doing things where you're going to produce better product, and just it's the evolution of creating something.
Yeah.
But as far as the product itself, might not be that much. It's funny, if you brainstorm with GPT, here's my soap dish, blah, 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 made of melamine, blah, 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 blah. Give me some ideas on maybe how I could improve the next version. Great to brainstorm on.
Yeah.
Better than most of if you asked me about it, it would do better than I would in trying to think about how to make a better soap dish and why it should use 90% melamine and 10% unobtainium.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it permeates. I mean, it's always been here. It permeates life. A reactive system is like Halifax water. If that system was fully reactive, it would have known in advance if there's a power outage. It would know exactly if there's a generator or not.
Yeah.
It would know the level of fuel, and it would know the leakage and the levels of the water. And
it's because like all systems are working together as like one.
Yeah, and if you architect it if you just slap a reactive thing on top of the existing infrastructure, it could be pretty ugly and buggy and whatever. If you can build it from scratch with beautiful modularity and components in that reactive mindset where each thing does its own base thing, and then the next layer does this, and then the top layer, you have somebody who's never touched a computer before says, can you let me know, their first day on the job, can you let me know if anything changes that I should know about?
Yeah.
And that's all they say?
Yeah.
The system would actually do it maybe better than someone who had worked there for 10 years and was a water PhD person.
that just because it takes like all that experience that they have, and it actually quantifies it into like actual things that
it's the brains of the humans who build it, each component, knowing they're the experts who built it, combined now with the brains of generative artificial intelligence
and the computing power,
where it might say that all the experts built it and they didn't detect anything wrong. With power grids, this is the big one. They didn't detect anything wrong, but GPT detected abnormalities that a human would have happened, gone, and a human would never have detected unless they went through and sifted through the data for years and said, hey, this happened.
Yeah.
GPT might say, you got something going on here that I think raises the level, at least checking out what it is.
Yeah. I would imagine that we're talking about like a whole city or municipality, like changing their whole way that they're monitoring their water systems or whatever.
Yep.
I would imagine, I could be wrong about this, that this would be a very difficult and expensive thing for like a city or whatever to implement, because you'd have to almost rip apart every system that they have now and replace it.
Well, or
do you just go one by one?
Well, it's the history of the world.
I guess.
You're slowly improving, rebuilding. Like in California, I'm guessing there's going to be a lot more concrete houses going up.
or some other way too, to be able to have some kind of system to be able to gauge when a fire and where it could happen, what to do against it.
It's not probably that smart to build a wooden house down there anymore.
Yeah.
So just over time, things get replaced out of necessity or slowly creep along. So whatever it is, unless if the world survives the next 100 years, slowly, and for me, it's exciting because it's an opportunity. It's only really, to me, been the past 2 years, and I'm just becoming an expert. I told you the other day, like, GPT is like the best teacher for a lot of things.
Yeah.
You can not just ask it to teach you something. You can say, use analogies and tell it to me like I'm 12.
Yeah.
And then once you're getting your head around it, okay, could you stop using analogies and tell it to me like 17?
Yeah.
And also do it knowing that I'm afraid of the dark.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah.
You're basically honing your professor to teach you in the way that works for you.
Yeah. And it remembers what you've prompted it as well too. So
yeah, it has a certain decent memory. But what were we? I just digressed there. What was the question that led to that?
Well, I guess we're just talking about, like, you were making the point that just because something is going to be difficult to implement doesn't mean that we don't do it, right? Because my question was like, oh, it's going to be very difficult and expensive for, whole municipality to change the whole system. But it's like, no, it doesn't matter. You still got to do it because it's going to be better, even if it's, piece by piece.
Why I'm excited, and if you look at the long thing, like even just software itself was a huge revolution, just like the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
But what's kind of neat that people wouldn't realize is it's only been maybe the last 2 years that that reactive programming has really come so viable and mature that you can build something from the ground up from scratch, like an architect for reactivity.
Right.
And so what that means is, even if you think there's a modern company out there and they have their systems running, say it's like Sobeys monitoring the temperature of the refrigerators, they could have a cutting edge system that's 5 years old. The foundation of that is legacy in certain aspects. Yeah. So to me, it doesn't need to be changed. It might be good enough, but it's kind of exciting when you're in this space, because you're like, pretty much 99% of existing systems out there, including Halifax Water, are legacy systems, even if they were built 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's a big paradigm shift and a beautiful one, because the other thing is you can slowly make something more reactive. The best thing, like a company who really knows what they're doing and has the resources, would have a separate team. Like I think Musk said the other day something about replacing the whole stack for Twitter. For X.
Did he really? I didn't hear that. Okay.
But he doesn't even really know I don't think he really even knows what the stack is, because he's just, I'm not going to get into it. So the only way I'd drive a Tesla was off a cliff and he was at the bottom.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. That's
okay. I'm not going any further.